Come on in, my brother. Welcome to Charlotte.
Everybody ready? Everybody ready? Everybody ready?
Introduce yourself.
Lil Caesar from Inglewood Family, and getting ready to hopefully answer some questions that you have about my neighborhood, give you a little bit of background on myself, and just try to keep it real, be honest about this thing, no extras, making up stuff, or throwing shade on anybody, just trying to lend my voice to something that we hope is going to be positive and will send a good message out to these young people that it ain't as serious as you think it is. I mean, it's all been done already. So we see where we're at as a people, and the type of results that we've gotten from this black on black violence and crime or whatever, and we're in desperate times now. So just hoping that this will touch, if it only touches one or two people, that sends them on the right path, then we did our job.
How old are you?
61.
And when did you move to Inglewood?
1973. I was born in Riverside, California, 1956, on March Air Force Base. My father was in the Air Force. He had met my mom back here in North Carolina, actually, and they got married, and he was a student at Johnson C. Smith University. They got married, moved to California. We moved to, I think Pops got stationed in New Hampshire. My mother and father ended up separating or whatever, and my dad had moved back to LA. So in 1965, I want to say it was the same year or right around the time of the Watts Rebellion, I moved back to LA to live with my pops.
All right, tell me about the neighborhood and the schools you attended.
Oh man, really, I lived in the neighborhoods that I lived in with my pops were pretty, I guess, what would you say, maybe upscale. However, I had kind of like a situation where I called the lady who basically helped raise me in California. She lived on one of the places she lived was off of St. Elmo Drive. I think that was down in the Pico area. Also, she lived on 74th between Main and Broadway. But we had, my dad had an apartment on Weatherly and Doheny, almost like right at the borderline of Beverly Hills. So coming up early on, I went to a lot of schools. I think I went to like Waverly Elementary, where you had a lot of movie industry and music industry people and all of that, kids that went to school there. I think Elgin Baylor, our Laker legend, his kids went to that school. Think I went there. It was another school called Rosewood. I want to say Hollywood Elementary or something like that. And when I was in school, my dad was like a disciplinarian out of the Air Force and the military, and his thing with education, that's something that he really pushed. He was one of the first African American, black men that had attained a master's degree in, like, I want to say like the late 50s, early 60s, something like that. So I was always an underachiever, you know, being in a school like that where a lot of times I might be one or two black kids, so I never really fit in or always felt comfortable in them schools. So when I was messing up in school, finally Pops ended up sending me to SCMA, Southern California Military Academy, which was in Long Beach, California. So went there, went to a junior high school and a high school, and later on we had bought a house in Thousand Oaks, so I went to school there for maybe a year or so and got in trouble out there. And so finally he had me going to school at I think the first school I was at was like Hamilton. Pops had ended up, he got in a car accident and ended up dying in 1973, I think it was. So from Hamilton, I went from Hamilton to Crenshaw, I think it was. That was around the year 73 when I moved to Inglewood. So that's about the same time that we transitioned from it being the basic or the umbrella of the chain gang, transitioning into what you all call Inglewood Family now. So when I got there, went from Hamilton to Crenshaw, and then when I got to Crenshaw, I don't know, I might have lasted maybe a few months or something like that at Crenshaw, but it kind of got out, or it became evident to the dudes at Crenshaw that I was from over in Inglewood, and I was actually carrying a gun to school with me every day at Crenshaw, and it was like basically so bold with it is that I would have my little pistol in my back pocket just showing like, yeah, what, and never really got caught up by any of the security or any of that stuff there. But the whole time I was at Crenshaw, I was trying to get into Inglewood. So I finally got into Inglewood High and basically went, when I wanted to or whatever. Ended up going from Inglewood to what was I think the continuation school that was right behind Inglewood was Hudnall. So I ended up at Hudnall. Later on ended up in camp.
Where was you living at when you went to Crenshaw High School?
76th Street, between 5th Avenue and 3rd Avenue.
Was Crenshaw your home school?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And actually, I think I lived on the LA side of 76th Street, and the other side of 76th Street was Inglewood, but I just gravitated into Inglewood. So I actually did live on the LA side of 76.
You say you was carrying a gun to high school, so what rivals was at Crenshaw at the time?
Basically, I think it was West Side Crips, and I don't really think it was factioned off like it later became when you started, having like Rolling 60s or Neighborhood Crips or, all the different Crip factions that started developing probably early to mid 70s up through the late 70s, early 80s.
Did you make any friends with the Van Brims or Van S boys?
Interesting story. Actually, one of the very few people that I knew from Van Ness was a dude named Roe from Van Ness. And I actually met Roe in Eastlake. And Roe is actually the one who came up with the what everybody now uses as the family sign to distinguish, the Inglewood family. Because prior to that, me and Ro were having a conversation or something, and I think he was like showing me West Side Van Ness was something like this here or something like that. And so the original family sign was something like this here. And he looked at it, he was like, oh man, this right here, how come y'all don't do this right here? I'm like, oh, that looks kind of good right there. So I took that from Eastlake and brought that back to the neighborhood, and that became the actual family sign. Actually came through Row from Van Ness.
So you went to Westlake before or after Crenshaw?
Eastlake.
Eastlake.
That was probably after. Probably
Okay.
after.
But all right. Let me try.
Eastlake, we call that Central,
Right,
and
right. But when you went to Crenshaw, you didn't have any friends from Van Ness?
Nah, actually, I was like a loner there. I was with one other dude from our neighborhood who actually, he reminded me that we actually used to ride to school together. My older homeboy named Davion, and he went to Crenshaw, and that's who I would ride to school with. But I think Davion might have been a senior at Crenshaw, and I was like junior or something like that there. So I didn't actually see a lot of Davion during the day and stuff like that. And so it was kind of like I was just there, and I don't remember really having any friends or being able to have known any of the brims or anything that were there, because it was like I basically spent my time watching my back while I was there, which it wasn't a very long time that I was at Crenshaw.
Okay, and after Crenshaw, where did you go?
From Crenshaw, then I was able to transfer to Inglewood High.
And what was the student body like as far as the racial makeup when you went there?
The racial makeup when I got to Inglewood was it was when it was kind of flipping. I want to say it was maybe 50% black, maybe might have even been 60% or maybe a little more. And that's when, we were kind of having little fights and squabbles with pockets of the white students that were still left there. But within probably a year or so, it was like probably 80%, 90% black, if I'm not mistaken.
So you got there right before white flight finished off.
Right.
Did the whites have any gangs that you knew of?
I don't remember hearing about any. I think I've read about some that they say were around there, but I mean, we never had any kind of issues where they were, pressuring us or anything like that. So we basically eased them up out of Inglewood. different kind of techniques and stuff that we do on that thing right there.